The reason I wanted everyone in the room is twofold. One is I heard this piece of feedback that one girl in particular was afraid. So I was like, whoa, maybe she'll be more comfortable if other people are like throwing rocks, like it's more likely you're going to throw a rock, right? So she may be more comfortable speaking up, right? If others are there, they're other team members. And I was like, I'm going to take this as a gift. In general, I love feedback. Even though it's bad, like I always look for feedback. I always want to improve. So I'm like, this is the best opportunity that I can to level up, even though it's hard. So I was like, woman up, go in there. So I went there and I told the team, I set the stage like, hey, listen, guys, I've listened. I've heard this feedback. First of all, I apologize. I didn't even recognize you guys were feeling this way. So anyway, I was very, very open-hearted, very vulnerable.
Hey, welcome to the Delivering Value podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Kaplan. And in this show, I chat with some of my SaaS heroes. I get to hear their career stories, and I get to hear how they've navigated through some of the toughest moments along the way. Today, I have Sam Leal on my show. Sam has spent a decade working in tech startups. She's the former head of marketing at Synthesis. She was the VP of growth marketing at Keynudu, where she started as an IC and spent 7 years working her way up the career ladder. And now Sam works as a full-time growth advisor. And before we jump into my conversation with Sam, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to all the listeners for your support. The guests who come on here are extremely vulnerable about sharing some of the mistakes and speed bumps and tough moments in their careers. And they let me know after the episodes get published how many DMs and messages and thank yous they get from you, the listeners. And that's why I make the show, to normalize the challenge and adversity that everybody faces. So thank you for listening. That's what inspires me to keep creating the show. And if you haven't already, really appreciate a review on Apple or Spotify, or you can subscribe to the show on YouTube to stay in the loop. All those help surface this content to other folks like you. Now let's go ahead and jump into the conversation with Sam. One of the things that I'm honestly curious about is I feel like there was a long time there when you were kind of a major player on LinkedIn. And that's how I first heard of you and found out about you. And then I know I sent you a note at one point and you said, I'm taking a little bit of a break. Are you comfortable sharing the background to that and what's been going on behind the scenes?
Absolutely. So when I started writing on LinkedIn, building an audience 2 years back and then started and then stopped, then I took it very seriously. And I think that's when we connected.
Why was building an audience important to you? Like, why was that a thing that you started doing 2 years ago?
It was in December 2020 when I saw a podcast or a note from Louis Grenier. I remember he said something that really stuck with me. And it was something around like marketers should feel obscurity. You shouldn't fear like rejection. You should fear obscurity because if no one knows you, it's like you are not there. He's absolutely right. Like I live in Mexico. If I want to connect with others and no one knows me here. And so I wanted to build a name for myself. The main struggle was, who am I to teach others, right? Who gave you the credit to do so? And the reason I framed this was, what would younger Sam would have loved to learn? And so I went with that route and I started posting. It was extremely challenging. And you know what? After 3 months, like I started getting traction. Of course, at the beginning, it was like dead, silent. But then something started like getting traction. I started connecting with others. And my boss at the time noticed. And he started mocking me. He said like, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is a challenge for me. I'm super introverted and I want to put myself out there. I want to meet other people and I want to share what I've learned. And he's like, okay, if you want me to follow or give you a like, let me know. That's what he said. And I'm like, I'm going to show you. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. And I grew my audience to a certain point. It was really good. But I then had my second baby and it was just chaotic.
And that was kind of right when we met, right? Like, so you and I, for the listeners, you and I met, I think you had the baby, not in the backpack, but the baby, what's the front pouch called?
Yeah, and the baby carrier. It was like a baby carrier. A lot of people, saw me in meetings. I was with my baby. So yeah, it was just chaotic, Andrew. And in the past, writing gave me a lot of energy and it started feeling draining at one point. I was like, what am I going to write about now? And I just felt blocked. And I was like, you know what? I was doing this for fun. I want to still make it fun. So for now, I'm going to take a break. And I have taken a break. I'm going to get back at it because what I miss the most is the conversations. a lot of like comments led to DMs that led to Zoom calls, which were amazing. And that's what gives me energy. So I'm going to return to it.
So super interesting. Can we go back in time a little bit? How does this story start? So can you just share a little bit about your background in your childhood?
Yeah, sure thing. So born and raised in Mexico, as a kid, I was always very, very, very curious. The type of kid that like collected rocks or like leaves. I wanted to dissect it in my microscope or with people. I was just fascinated by how they make decisions, why I like some things and not others. So I was really attuned to feelings and where people were getting uncomfortable. So I felt that I was very good at that pattern matching. And I just love learning about people's stories. I thought I was going to go into the therapist route because I loved like hearing about people's stories and weaving out, and people are like a puzzle. So I just love learning more about people. So that was one component. And the other component is I was very competitive, whether it's in sports or video games. I love competition. And an interesting thing about competition for me is that competition felt personal. So if I lost, it felt like physical pain. So that meant I was going to train harder than anyone else on that team or on that part. Like I was going to get to the top, whatever it takes. So I was very driven in that part, but because the losing part hurt so much. One beneficial thing that came out of it was that training hard to get to an outcome, I felt that it was in my control. So even though I'm not the smartest or I'm not the fastest, I'm going to get there by hard work. So that really helped me a lot later on because I was willing to go the extra mile when other people weren't.
What sports did you play?
I played soccer. Not played, but like did gymnastics for like more than 6 years. So yeah, gymnastics and soccer.
Amazing. And how would your friends, if we were to meet one of your high school friends, how would they describe you?
They would describe me as very disciplined and driven. So if I decided to work out, does this mean I'm not going to go to lunch or at a party? Yes. So I was very committed. So if I was going to do something, I did it. But there's something important about that. So yeah, I got good grades, was very driven, but I was good at the school game. And so this is important because after college, I felt lost because I knew how to win at the school game, right? There's a track, you know how to get good grades, like that's it. That's how you win. How do you win at the game of life? No one teaches you that. I was out of college and now you choose. What do you want to do? I don't know. I was so used to focused on winning this game. Now that I have the opportunity of you can do anything you want, not everything, but anything. Now what? And one thing that I learned is that I focused for so long on winning this game. I didn't even know what I wanted. It is the importance of not just winning any game, but choosing which game you want to play and then figure out how you want to win it. That's the thing. So it was a big learning for me and something I want to instill in my kids of like, be careful, like understand how things work and what you want. This is just one game, right? There are many games through your life, through your journey. So it's very important that you know what you want and know yourself. Otherwise, you'll end up lost like I was after college.
And what did you major in college?
I double majored in psychology and international relations.
Ah, interesting. And so psychology and international relations. So I can understand. So you graduate from that. Now what? How do you end up taking your first steps into the SaaS PLG marketing world?
It was by accident and by design. What do I mean by that? So by accident in the sense of I came back, I studied abroad, I came back home and I went to dinner with one of my old friends and she had just taken another job. And I was like, okay, what are you doing now? And this is very, very interesting. So she had just printed out some business cards. And so she took out the business card and it was like any business card I had ever seen. So she put it on the table and was like, what? And she was like, yeah, I just joined this startup. They are in the early child development space. We are giving parents activities to do with their kids. And I just couldn't stop looking at the business card. And Andrew, I just thought to myself, yeah, that sounds interesting because I majored in psychology. I love to know how learning works, how learning is consolidated. So that part is interesting. Not necessarily about child development, but it was something new and interesting. What mattered most to me was that business card because it wasn't like anything I had seen. This business card was like an airplane sort of thing, but like a paper airplane. So it was so playful, but so high quality, something that you wanted to keep like an artifact. And I just thought to myself, if they're willing to put that much thought into a business card, imagine what they're doing inside that company. I took the business card, I saved it, and I thought to myself, I'm going to join this company. They were not even hiring. By accident, a job opening came up a month later, and I was like, I want it. It was around being a content developer, not content marketer, like creating content, researching activities, etc. And I'm like, I don't care, whatever. Like, I need to join this. And that's how I got into that company. And so that is the accent piece. The design is the other. So 2 weeks after I got in, by the way, this company at that point, I was the fourth employee. There was nothing there. They were just starting. So everything bare bones. I was the fourth employee. I was like helping create the activities, filming with the kids. It was all fun. And so by the second week, the CEO asked me for a meeting and he says, well, how are you doing? How are you finding the company so far? And I told him, great, I'm loving it. He's like, good. Would you like to run the marketing department? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, can you run it? And I'm like, I don't know anything about marketing. And he's like, so you can learn, right? And I'm like, yeah, I guess let's do this. And that's how I got into marketing. So that is the accident piece. And then by design is that from the get-go, Andrew. So by the way, I didn't know anything about marketing, didn't know the lingo. Like when someone comes in brand new, oh my God, there's so much lingo, so many things you need to learn at once. And I was like, it felt like a whirlwind. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try to understand this. From the get-go, my goal was revenue. From the get-go, I knew that goal was something related to bottom line metrics. It's not just like, give me installs or signups. No, I've been held accountable for something different. So let's try to understand how things works and then make some improvements later, but let's try to understand. So I was like 2 weeks in, learning how campaigns work, social media, etc. And I just kept things as they were, right? And later on, they were asking me questions and I didn't know anything. And that led me to, okay, you need to understand how things work in order to make this grow. But given that I was held accountable for bottom line metrics, I needed to understand the journey. And so that led me to discussions with the product team, with the tech team, understanding, okay, once my user signs up, what is their journey like? What is the onboarding? Are they getting to the wow moments that we've identified? What are they? And making sure we actually retain them along the way. Because one thing is for them to pay, another thing is for them to stay. And that is on me as well. So I think that empowerment and also incentives in the sense of like my goal was bottom line revenue. I needed to make sure that the user and the whole journey was being taken care of and that I had eyes on it.
That's super cool. You learned the lesson in your first gig that it takes most people like 10 years to learn, right? Most people they learn like one piece of the puzzle. And then at some point in time, it's like, oh, all this is just in support of revenue. So that's cool that you had that perspective off the jump.
Yes, I agree. It was difficult, but it was a blessing in disguise.
So you talked about growing up playing sports and being competitive. And one of the things that I love, I listen to a lot of sports podcasts, is when athletes talk about their welcome to the league moment. Are you familiar with that as a concept?
No, I'm not.
All right. So the welcome to the league moment, let's take soccer, for example. So like some college soccer star who's a natural athlete, dominates at their position, very, very successful in college, then all of a sudden joins the professional ranks and gets humbled, usually some point at the beginning. And usually they tell this from some stance down the road where they look back on it and they're like, yeah, my welcome to the league moment was when I thought I was going to score. And then this guy came over and checked me or slide tackled me and I was out of the game. And he pulled me aside and said, don't you ever do that again type of thing. And so I'm curious to know, did you have any welcome to the league moment when you started getting into SaaS and into marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's related to the story that I was sharing earlier, where my boss, the CEO, asked me to lead marketing. So I'm trying to figure everything out. And it was like 2 weeks later, I was understanding how the big campaigns work. And then I remember he put me aside and asked me, what are the numbers like? How are we doing right now? And I told him. And he's like, why did the cost increase so much? Why did CAC increase so much? And I'm like, I don't know. And he told me, what? You don't know? And I'm like, yeah, I don't remember if he said this. It was so long ago, but I remember to myself that I felt so ashamed, like by his look, like, what do you mean you don't? Like, it's your job. Since I was trying to keep everything working, I was just mimicking. I was just copying what other people had done without understanding what were the inputs that were driving these results. And so I remembered after that point, whenever someone asks me and I don't know the answer, one, I should tell them, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. And I have this hypothesis of what may be going on. And this is what I plan to test next because I need to be on top of it. And I need to understand how things work, not just what this other person did, like copy paste. And I carried it with me up until this time. It stuck with me.
And what went through your head when he pulls you aside and gives you that feedback? Because you're kind of caught off guard by it, right? This is the first time he's asked you for that kind of feedback. What were you saying to yourself?
I was really hard on myself. He's trusting you to like level up. You need to raise to that standard. And even like afterwards, he was thinking of me like the expert. He knew I just got here, but he was treating me like the expert. And that really helped me level up to his expectation. He saw something in me and I just felt this responsibility to level up to that level. But my inner talk was really hard. Like, how come you don't know what's happening? Like, they already taught you how it works. Why didn't you ask some questions? So it was a really hard self-talk, but it really made me think, okay, you don't know this. No one here is going to explain it to you because no one knows either. You are the expert here. So you better go and learn how to find out. So be resourceful. It was a great lesson.
And has that been the only time where something like that has happened? Where somebody's pulled you aside, asked you a question that caught you off guard and you didn't know what to do?
Oh, yeah, many times. But I come back to that moment. And so after that happened, I was like laser focused. I always need dashboards. And again, marketing is like an art and a science as well, because it's a lot of judgment, gut feeling. So yes, I want to have data. It's not like every single thing needs to be measured, but I need to understand how the business is doing and see the business as a whole, right? That will come in afterwards, where you need to understand how different units operate because we're an ecosystem. And so we depend on different units to make sure that it works properly. But yeah, it has happened many times. And I go back to that moment and is either, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. I'll come back to you in like an hour or so with some hypothesis of what I think and the next steps. But it's always around next steps. It's not like, I don't know. And that's it. No. This is what I'm planning to do next.
I love that. Where did you learn that, by the way? Because I feel like I talk to a lot of folks as a coach or just conversationally. And the challenge that you shared, I think, is a common one where somebody gets asked a question and they don't know the answer. And then they freeze up and then they have all this negative self talk, but they're not able to move forward. And you did something really commendable from the very beginning, which is, I don't know. And here's how I'm going to figure it out. And I'll follow up in this time frame. Where did you learn that? How did you think of that?
I don't know exactly where I learned it, but I think it comes back to sports. Whenever you're stuck in like a level, you need to continue training. And sometimes that training looks different, right? If you want to build a different muscle. So I think it was just to that point of, if I want to get better, I need to do something different. And that something different is that next step. So if something went down, want to understand what happened. So really diagnosing, but also if you find out there's something that needs to be done, you need to try something different. So I think it goes back to this piece of there needs to be movement. Otherwise, if you're stuck, you need to keep moving and you'll find out. I think you find out through movement and learning. Even when I'm stuck in thinking, I need to move. Like there's something around movement, ideas, motion, momentum in business that really unlocks opportunities.
There's like a famous quote from Tony Robbins. I might butcher it here, but it's something like, intention goes where energy flows or something like that. There's like real science behind that. So you get moving and sometimes it gets the energy flowing and gets things unlocked. And it sounds like you do that intuitively. And so you have this moment, a little bit of a speed bump in your journey. Is that the only low point for you? Because you've gone on to have a very successful career, obviously as an advisor and a couple in-house gigs. Is that the only low on the way?
No. I have many low points along the way. But I guess one of the lowest points was from going to an IC because I was a really good IC. I wanted to be like a really good player. Now you need to become a coach. And that is very challenging.
Totally different job.
Totally different job. And no one teaches you that. So it was extremely challenging. And I am so sorry for all my reports along the way that had to go through this learning journey. But yeah, so I remember this instance. We were growing a lot. I believe the company at that moment was around, I don't know, maybe 60 people or so.
Is this the same company or a different gig?
No, this is the same company, but like years later.
So same company, years later, you start scaling a team. How far in are you, right? Because this was your first gig right out of school. Where are we at in terms of like your post-college professional career? How far in?
Maybe like 4 years in. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but it was like 4 years in. We had like millions and millions of users. The team was like more than 60 people. We were really robust. We had different departments in the company. It was getting big. And so as the company grew, our goals grew even more ambitious, right? And I remember that I took so much pride in my well-oiled machine, Andrew, that was marketing has everything on the wraps. Like we had everything documented. We were making presentations every week and every 2 weeks. So there was a lot of process and documentation that in hindsight, it wasn't necessary, but okay. So I have this well-oiled machine. Ideally, everyone knows what marketing is doing because I didn't want marketing to be a black box. I wanted everyone to know like what marketing was doing and sharing the wins, etc. But you need to hit the goals, you need to document, you need to present. So there was a lot going on. In just a few months, the goals got even higher. Whenever I feel pressure, I push harder.
Just like in sports, right? If you have bigger competition, you got to prep even more. Yeah. So that makes sense why that's in your DNA.
But again, doesn't work when you execute through a team. So some people don't work like that. And this is what happens. So in just a few months, we started caring a lot about like culture, team morale. And in just a few months, when everyone was sort of the same, my team was like the one with highest turnover and then lowest morale. I didn't understand it, Andrew. And I'm a person that I think I have a lot of self-awareness, that I intuitively understand when things are going wrong or when people are not feeling at their best. And I was completely oblivious. Like I didn't see it coming. It was a complete surprise. And I was just really frustrated by that.
And what happened? Was there an internal employee NPS? Was it formal feedback? Was it kind of informally you heard through the grapevine?
So two things. One, this was like a form that everyone submitted to HR. So we did scorings by department. So by an NPS. And I started hearing from office gossip that people were just extremely burned out, that they were thinking of quitting. Some of my team members were even afraid of me. And so I learned through this process that leadership requires a whole different skill set. And I was not even being a leader and not a great manager either, not even a good manager. Like I was just do more. That was it. Like something came up. I was not prioritizing, Andrew. That was the main issue. They were looking at me like, help us prioritize, right? Tell them no, we do this, we do that. I was just like, yes, let's do more. And my team was like, we're drowning. Okay, like we're drowning. Yes, we're hitting some goals, but we're drowning. And so, yes, the turning point came when I heard this through office gossip, and it was a very harsh wake-up call. I decided, okay, either I talk to them one-on-one or I do this as a group, right? Because I needed to do something. And I talked about this with a coach. They hired a coach at that point in time. Like we had some sessions and I asked him like, I'm thinking of doing like a no filter session with my team because I'm noticing this. And he was like, I do not recommend it. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, it's going to be brutal. Like, are you sure you can handle that? And I'm like, how bad can it be? And he's like, Sam, they're not going to hold back. It could get very ugly and your response to them will matter a ton too. Like it could all go wrong if you don't manage it well, etc. And I'm like, okay. And I left the call and I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And shortly after, I invited everyone. We were in person, by the way, so it's even more brutal. We were in person and I asked them, hey team, can we chat? And we went into this big room. Everyone like was in a sort of circle.
Did you set the stage? Did you tell them what we were going to chat about?
No. Let's huddle for a second. I didn't tell them the context. Of course, they probably were afraid. Maybe they're like, she's going to fire us. But anyway, in hindsight, who knows? But I was like, no, I don't want to overthink it. I think this is the right move. I need to show them, one, that I'm vulnerable, that I want to learn. I want to do this better. And I want to understand what am I doing wrong, right? And the reason I wanted everyone in the room is twofold. One is I heard this piece of feedback that one girl in particular was afraid. So I was like, whoa, maybe she'll be more comfortable if other people are like throwing rocks, like it's more likely you're going to throw a rock, right? So she may be more comfortable speaking up, right? If others are there, they're other team members. And I was like, I'm going to take this as a gift. In general, I love feedback. Even though it's bad, like I always look for feedback. I always want to improve. So I'm like, this is the best opportunity that I can to level up, even though it's hard. So I was like, woman up, go in there. So I went there and I told the team, I set the stage like, hey, listen, guys, I've listened. I've heard this feedback. First of all, I apologize. I didn't even recognize you guys were feeling this way. So anyway, I was very, very open-hearted, very vulnerable. I asked them for very specific feedback. And Andrew, I got everything from the way I asked for follow-ups on Slack They imagined my tone, and so that was important. The timings I was following up. Everyone that knows me knows that I could Slack you at 11 p.m. It doesn't mean that I needed to respond, but it's like, why couldn't just wait until like 8 a.m. the next morning? And I'm like, okay, noted. I'm going to try to do that. So anyway, some things were like general, but mainly it was around prioritization. That was their main struggle. So it was a huge learning. What I asked them is, hey, listen, guys, this is all the things that I noted from this discussion. I'm going to have another meeting in a month and see how I'm doing, because I want to make sure that you know that I'm taking this seriously and that I'm making changes. And I want to see where this gets us, because I want this to work and I really value your feedback. So anyway, after the meeting, individually, they messaged me like, wow, I really appreciate that. No one had done it. I needed to take a break after that meeting. It was extremely harsh. It hurt a ton, but I needed to hear it. And it was one of the best things that I did. Super hard, but one of the best things for my career.
This episode is presented by AppQues. If you work in product-led growth, you know how important activating and engaging new accounts is. Turning new accounts into active users is critical to your success in a PLG environment, and typically why activated accounts is a North Star metric for growth teams. It's why my team spent years focused on improving our new user onboarding experience during my time at Wistia and at Postscript. And that's why I'm so excited that AppQues is sponsoring the show. They're just as passionate about helping product-led companies fix their onboarding and their retention as I am. They're the leading product onboarding and adoption platform for web and mobile apps, and they've helped over 1,500 SaaS orgs create exceptional onboarding experiences that convert new users into power users and brand advocates. So if you're looking for help activating more new accounts, head to appcues.com/value. They have a free new user onboarding audit, which is done by Ramli John. He literally wrote the book on new user onboarding, and he's a close personal friend of mine. For help, head to appcues.com/value. I want to go back and then I want to explore this more because it's just a fascinating moment. What's your mentality going into that meeting? Do you sort of have like your defense mechanism up a little bit, or are you just trying to go in and be ultra vulnerable? Because you know what's probably going to happen. Your coach warned you what could happen, but like you're the only one that knows what's about to go down in this meeting. What's your mentality as you walk into that room and you start to see the other 5 team members filter in?
I started to get very nervous. I could feel in the palms of my hands, I started sweating. And I'm like, no. I think it was like internal, like sort of shifting, like this is a movie. I'm controlling a character, like detaching myself. Your goal is you want this to work. You are not going to hit your goals if your team doesn't feel comfortable, if they're burning out. You need them. If you value like winning as a company so much, you win through others. And you need to be able to connect and influence them. And there was a lot of damage that I had done unintentionally that I needed to repair. And so I came in the sense of like, you've also hurt them too in a way. So try to make this right. I need to be vulnerable for this to work and for me to connect.
And what's the energy in the room like as it gets going? So you start asking for feedback. How does the energy in the room play out? Is it like angry? Are people like grateful? Somewhere in between?
They're confused. At the beginning, the energy is uptight. Everyone is with their defense. I remember that they were sitting way behind, like they didn't want to be so close. It speaks a lot about how the room was feeling at that point. But yeah, it was super tense. And out of nowhere, I always schedule meetings and I prep them, etc. So it was very out of character. So I think that's why everyone was a little bit uptight.
And so you get all the feedback. Are you writing it down, by the way? How did you capture it all?
We had like a blackboard and I was writing everything.
So you have the meetings, you collect all the feedback, you take a minute to regroup, and you said you set up a follow-up meeting a month later. What happens in that, and how was that meeting different?
Way different. Like they felt they were the drivers. And so they felt very comfortable. So it was like, this is the things that I did. Like, how am I doing here? And I asked them to score me from 0 to 10 so that I know whether I'm improving or not really, because everyone can tell you, yeah, it feels better. I want to score so that I can track it and see improvement. And yeah, a month later, they felt like way more improvement. Some areas still needed refinement. I messed up on like some things with lag, but anyway, they felt a lot of progress and they felt trust, right? Like she's taking it seriously. She's following up with this. So they felt much better. And I believe it took me maybe 3 or 4 months for that score to start going higher. So now the complaint was not about morale about my manager. It was just morale like in general, because there was a lot in the company, but at least department wise, that was not the issue anymore. So I was able to turn around, but it took me like 3, 4 months.
Did you tell your coach you ignored their advice and did it anyways?
Yeah, I did.
And what was their reaction?
He laughed and he's like, oh my God, how did it go? Right? And I was like, it went amazing. I told him at one point I wanted to cry because it was really, really hard. Because it's like looking in a mirror, but you've never seen that mirror. So you don't recognize that person. So it was really hard and I didn't cry. I'm proud of that. He was really proud that I did that I had the courage to go in and be vulnerable. And it paid dividends after. So that was good.
What would be your advice to somebody who's maybe in the middle of this? They're a new manager. They've been a high-powered IC. Now they're all of a sudden this manager. They have these direct reports. It's a totally different skill set, and things aren't going well, whether they're hearing about it formally or informally. What would be your advice to someone who's in that situation?
I don't know if what I did works for everyone, but I think it's good to talk with the team and understand what is their perspective as well, to understand the blind spots that you don't notice. Like for me, it was really eye-opening, the prioritization piece. Again, I was not even seeing it. They had to tell me. So I think it's good for them to show you a reflection of what's going on that you don't even see. So it's good to touch base with them. They have a lot of the answers. They're in the front lines. And the other big piece is really understanding how each of your team member operates. Because that was one of my mistakes as well, that I was treating everyone the same as I like to be treated. That was my mistake. And so I operate at another different level. Not everyone operates at my level, and that's okay. They operate in different functions. Their responsibilities are different. Their styles are different, but they can get it done. So I learned I needed to adjust. So really understand them at their core, understanding what's going on in their environment. That was really important. So I think two pieces here is taking the time to really understand your team, where they shine, where they don't, and try to either fill with resources or change their roles. So like really understanding where they shine. And the other piece is making sure that you touch base with them to ask them, what could we do better? Right? Because sometimes they have the best answers being at the front lines.
What's so cool about this story is this is a tough moment that you're describing, right? So we're exploring it, and I think you're being really vulnerable, and I think it's awesome how vulnerable you're being, reflecting on this and sharing. And I think everybody has some moments like this, and sometimes the self-dialogue can be, man, I'm not made for this. I got fucking roasted. I look up to somebody who might be looking at you and your background. They might look at someone like you and say, well, that person never went through anything like this. And what's cool is you're saying, I did go through something like this, a really intense thing where I hit some speed bumps and some adversity, and I used it to get better. And I used it to try to fine tune my craft. And I used it as motivation to become a better version of myself. And I think that's really cool. Not everybody is able to push through. I think sometimes people get feedback like this and they get stuck in it, or they take it on as too much of their identity, or it follows them from one job to one job. And why do you think you were able to take this as a moment to get better where others might get stuck?
That's a good point. And it did cross my mind. Maybe I'm not made for this. Maybe I'm like a great IC and that's it. I love to be a player. Maybe I'm not made to be a coach. However, as my career progressed, even before this happened, I had gotten really great feedback from people that I was managing that they really loved my style because X, Y, and Z. And so I remember the wins that I had in the past, and I'm like, this doesn't define me necessarily. It's a speed bump. Also, the coach that I mentioned, he also told me it's a very different skill set. So I think that was a big unlock that it's a skill. Therefore, I can learn it and I can master it. It doesn't define me where I'm at right now. You just need to improve. And as with anything, with like sports or anything, it requires practice. I need to understand what's the map here, and they need to show me what the map is so that I can get better. So I think I approach it from that lens.
It makes sense. If you were put in a new position in sports, you wouldn't be good at it for a while. You would suck at it for a while. So it makes sense if you get put in a new position at work, you're probably going to suck at it for a while. But sucking at it at work feels maybe more painful because it's not that you got somebody burn past you on the soccer field and scored a goal. It's usually that you have these types of moments that feel tougher, that feel like they have more weight.
You know what I think that really helped me, Andrew? And I didn't do this consciously, but I failed so much when I started at that company because I didn't know anything. And so I was like, if I don't feel that I know anything at this point about leadership or management, even though I've done it wrong, apparently. I need to relearn it. I can do it because I already did. And I think because I failed literally so much for so many years, it's part of the same game, right? You're going to fail, you're going to learn, you're going to grow. So it's just a cycle. But it was because I failed a lot. This is why I'm so grateful for my startup experience, because it was pain after pain after pain. You just get used to pain. You don't know anything. You get humbled. So that was a really, really big part of it.
Have there been other moments in your journey where you've been humbled or maybe experienced a little bit of self-doubt?
Yeah. There was this time when the CEO, who was my boss, completely bypassed me on a major project. This is several years later, and I was currently living in another city. So everyone was living in the same headquarters, like in that city of that same headquarters. I was living in a different city. I came in like every 2 weeks. So there is this important piece. Everyone was in the office. I was not. I was working remotely and then came in every 2 weeks. And so there was this branding project. As the person leading marketing, you'd think I'll be the first person to ask for their opinion, right? Like, what do you think? Consult me. So he goes around, talks to other team members, makes a decision, and just tells me what the decision is, like it's no big deal. And I was like, wait, you're rebranding. Like, who chose that name? What is the insight coming from, etc.? And he's like, it's already decided.
And this is a major initiative, right? So there's a major company initiative. It's a marketing initiative, and you're hearing about it secondhand after everything has happened.
Secondhand, not even by my boss. I heard it through another team member, and I was like, well, what? And so I'm like, wait, let me talk to him. So I confronted him and like, hey, listen, I found out about this. What's going on? And naturally, of course, I was very upset. Why did he bypass me, right? Why he didn't even thought about consulting marketing? Like that was just baffling to me. So anything consulted him. He didn't think it was a big deal. He was like looking at me like, why are you making such a big fuss about this? Let's just move forward, right? Let's keep going. But no. So after that meeting, he was like, there's no big deal. And I couldn't let it go. So after a day or two, I came back to him and I told him, hey, listen, this is not minor for me. This is a big deal. I know to you, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but to me, it is. I wanted to please think about why you didn't consider me. Because to me, there's a bigger thing here. It's not just that you forgot about me. The reason that you forgot to consult me, it comes deeper to that. And I please ask you to think about it and let me know. I'd love that feedback because there's something missing here. And he was like, okay, I'll think about it. And a week later, he asked me to go to his office. He had a different office, not in the headquarters, a different office. There was this big office. I came in and I was very nervous because one, why didn't we discuss this in the headquarters? So anyway, we go to a separate office and I asked him for the feedback and he didn't hold back. He told me straight up that the reason he didn't consult me was because I was a lot of a yes woman and that I was lacking critical thinking skills. And I was just like, whoa. That was the toughest feedback I've ever got, ever, ever, ever by far. So first of all, in that moment, I was just in shock. It felt like literally someone threw me cold water, a slap, everything combined. How do you answer to it? Like my stomach just like dropped. I knew something had gone wrong, right? That's why I asked him. But critical thinking, man. The first reaction for me is I was angry. I was like, how dare you? My team and I have gotten you to this place because the company is driven by marketing. Like, are you kidding me? If I didn't have critical thinking skills, why don't you fire me? Right? Like all these thoughts in my head. And I remember again, like feedback has been really important to me my whole life. And I'm like, sometimes he's wrapped in sandpaper. I really respected him, by the way. So he's extremely smart. I respected him. So I'm like, he's telling you because he's seen something. Maybe you are not aware of it. And so that yes woman thing was a key piece here. What does this mean? I mentioned this earlier. Whatever initiative he came up with, I was like, yes, we can do it. Like, let's go. And again, by brute force, I get it done. But what he wanted was a thought partner. And so since he already knew what he wanted for the brand, he was like, I might as well make the decision because she always says yes. So I'm like, oh my God, that makes sense. And I'm like, can I ask you something? And he's like, sure. And I'm like, if you could score me from like a 0 to 10 of like 0, she doesn't have any critical thinking skills, to like 10, she's like amazing critical thinking. And he said, I would score you at an 8. And I'm like, I think he wanted to make me feel better, maybe, because he just said I was lacking critical thinking skills. Maybe he wanted to sugarcoat it. So I was like, okay, can I ask you a favor? Can I meet you again in like 4 weeks, 6 weeks? I'm going to learn everything that I can about critical thinking, better decision making. And I want to make sure that this score goes to like a 9.5 or a 10 in 3 months. Can I ask you for that? To be a partner with me on this? I really want to improve. And he's like, yes, sure, let's do it. And I'm like, if you could point me to one resource that you think could really help me, what would that be? And he introduced Barnum Street to me by Shane Parrish. And I was like, okay, I devoured everything from Shane Parrish. Like I went on this rabbit hole about critical thinking, decision making, and it really helped me a ton. It was the hardest feedback by far. I felt so insecure afterwards, Andrew. I wasn't even aware of it, that it hurt me so much. So I went on a journey, learned a lot, and it helped me a ton in my career.
First of all, fucking A. That sounds brutal. As you shared that, I couldn't help but just think you are a badass. Because I don't think I would have, like, think about critical thinking skills. You were able to ask that in the moment. I'm just picturing myself in that room. My skin is tingling, honestly, as you tell the story. I feel like I'm having an anxiety attack listening to it. I can only imagine what it would feel like in the room. But even with that circumstance, you had the capacity to say, hey, could you score me? And what would your advice be to someone so that I could get better at this? And I'm just in awe because that is insanely impressive. And to me, that is critical thinking skills because I wouldn't have been doing that. My brain would have turned off.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that. I think for me, I always think myself of like a product in progress. I'm always evolving and the hurdles as my biggest unlock. Like this is an opportunity. I try to reframe it as opportunity rather than now I hit a wall. It's like an opportunity. What can I learn from this? So it's always whenever I get stuck is what can I learn from this? It has always left me in a better place. So that angle, if anyone is facing that, like it helps me think of it as an opportunity.
How does that meeting end, by the way? Does that meeting end feeling good? Does it end feeling bad? Are you brought together by that conversation? Like, what's the vibe as you're walking out?
The vibe is horrible, Andrew. Like, ended it in the sense of like, can I ask you for this favor? Like 6 weeks from now, can we get on a meeting and you can score me again? I'm going to read everything about Shane Parrish. I'm going to find all these books. Like, I really want to improve at this. And I would love for you to help me. I want to track progress with you, right? Because I want to get better at this. And he's like, sure. That's why he was a really great boss. He was like very harsh in several sense, but also he cared about me. That's why he was sharing this feedback. But no, so imagine that tone. Like, yes, I ended it in that. But I left the room feeling horrible. He just delivered the harshest feedback I've ever had. And of course, I cried in the car, right? I never expected this. It was brutal, but I couldn't break down in his office. Like, no way. So, yes, I broke down in the car, build yourself up and keep going. But yes, it was very hard.
So, what's it like the day after that? So, you have this moment, you go home, probably you don't sleep that night. There's no way I would have slept that night. You wake up the next day. How do you show up in the office? Are you self-conscious? Are you just hungry to improve? Like, how are you feeling on the inside?
So yeah, I'm hungry to improve, but I'm also very self-conscious. So this was during a weekend. So that was good. Like it was Friday. So the weekend helped me like internalize and blah, 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 talk to myself. So, but by Monday, it's still a lower energy, right? But in a way, it was no one knows, like he knows, but my team doesn't know because it would have been like something like a score that everyone saw, like maybe would have made me feel a lot more self-conscious, but it didn't. So in a way, it was like, okay, this is between him and I need to get better. It was just a little bit lower energy, but it wasn't as dramatic. It just took me a little while to get back up in my typical energy.
And so how'd it go 6 weeks later when you had your follow-up?
I asked him, like, what are you noticing? Because he was also attending some of the meetings. We had like weekly meetings, things that I was asking the team, how I was sharing the reports. He was noticing different things. And he told me that, like, the questions you're asking are much better. I'm noticing that you are trying to think about the bigger picture. So this is the other thing. I focused on like my metrics, right? And the thing that I forgot is that everything is intertwined, right? So for example, imagine that CAC is rising because I own CAC. That was like my key metric. CAC is rising. What's happening? I'm like, immediately, new campaigns, a promotion, like band-aids, the things that I control. Wait a minute. Why is CAC rising? Let's look at the inputs. Okay, what happened to spend? What happened to CPM? What happened to the onboarding, like sign up? Did it went down? Did it go up? What happened to conversion rate? And are they getting stuck? So he was asking me different questions and looking through the whole funnel. And he was like, that is what I want. I wanted to question the question. If I'm having low sales or my CAC is rising, that is a symptom. That is not what I am trying to fix. I need to fix the inputs. So go and find them. What's happening here? What's driving this result? So I learned a lot through that. But at 6 weeks later, it went really well. I think we had 2 more meetings. And then after that, like I dropped it. I didn't need him anymore for that. Like I felt that I knew how could I get more progress. And it was a lot about asking better questions, understanding everything as a system, not just marketing. It was like, marketing, product, tech. Like you need to look at everything, even though it's not my responsibility. It is my responsibility. At the beginning, I was like, this is not on me. It is on you because you own revenue. And so whatever other departments are involved in, you need to talk to them and you need to influence them. So anyway, yes, learn a ton in that process, but it went well.
And how long do you stay at the company after that?
In total, I spent 7 years there. It was my baby, Andrew, 7 years. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about different skills and communication and things like that. I'm wondering, going back in time, if there are other skills that you wished you had worked on earlier in your career and what those might be.
So I think there are two of them. The first one is, I don't know how to encapsulate this, but it's like a mixture of communication and networking, but networking in a way that is about connecting with others. Why I'm saying this is that earlier in my career, as I mentioned, I'm new to this. I don't know anything and I didn't have a partner to bounce ideas off of. Again, I am the expert here. The discipline of growth in Mexico, are you kidding? Like it took years for it to take off. And even now, like there are very little growth professionals, like very serious growth professionals that have a lot of experience here. So it was really, really tough to find other people or a community to bounce ideas off of. So that one is really hard. I learned it way later in my career and I would have avoided so many headaches at the beginning or things where I got stuck, where I needed perspective. I wish I knew how to do that better. I'm still working at it, right? Even how you and I connected or I'm meeting with others, like I'm trying to be more proactive about it because there's a lot of gold to uncover there. So this networking, and I mix it with communication because it's also an art to connect with someone, right? Like how do you build relationships? I don't want this to be transactional. I want to make sure that I provide value as well. So it's like a dance. I'm still learning, but wish that I had prioritized it even earlier. Like even at school, as I mentioned, it was like, get good grades. I didn't even care about the network that I built. It was like, get good grades. What do you mean? What game are you playing? It's not going to serve you afterwards. So I was just really frustrated about that. Like the networking communication piece, building a good support network. It's very, very important. And the other piece, Andrew, it could go back to critical thinking, but it's just asking better questions. I am just a fan of questions. Literally, I have a notion that is like, I'm a collector of questions. I like save different questions. It could be for interviews. It could be for thinking, for reflection, because a good question unlocks better insights. And so throughout my career, I've learned to ask better questions. It's not like I see a metric and how can I fix it? Is why is this happening, right? And asking why several times. Well, this went down. Why? Like the 5 whys helps a lot. And also when thinking about delegation in terms of leadership, which is still something that I'm working at, is I always go to the how. How can I do it? Because I'm very technical and I like to go in. And that is not the right question. A lot of the times is who? Who can help me build this faster? Or who can I go to unlock this? So it's always trying to find that person that will help you unlock. You don't have to figure everything out. Because at the beginning, I thought, again, I am the expert here and you need to have all the answers. I don't. And that played a lot when I was in leadership positions. I thought I needed to be the smartest person in the room. I felt so scared when like someone made a comment that was smarter than me. I was like, damn, I should have like made that comment earlier and I've learned, no, I always in my meetings, I like to speak last. I want to hear what everyone has to say, build on top of them, and then I speak. Like, it's not that I am the star here. They are the stars and I want them to figure it out. If they level up, we all level up. Like you fall to the level of your team. Your priority is not you. You're not the star. No one cares. It's for your team to level up. So I've learned a lot of like, yes, asking good questions so that your team can also level up. And also for me to diagnose correctly and then propose solutions that actually solve the problem, not just symptoms.
As a side note, have you read the book called The Coaching Habit? It's all about asking questions.
Yeah, he has some great questions for like one-on-one.
Yeah, it's like new managers or new leaders. It's like a blue and yellow cover. It's probably on the shelf in the back there. But it's what I was thinking about as you shared all that. I was like, oh, that's like that book that I read. I had a whole list of questions after that.
That one was really good and very actionable. Those questions, I borrow some and use them to this day.
So for you at this stage in your career, I think it's easy for folks to look at you and think, wow, I'd love to get there in my career, right? The experiences that you've shared and obviously some of the speed bumps along the way. What are your goals at this stage?
My goals at this stage are to really continue as again, I'm a work in progress. So it's to continue to level up, to continue impacting. Again, I love to work at businesses that have bigger purpose, that leave a lasting impact. So continue impacting families, kids, whatever that may be. That is really, really important to me because I want to leave a legacy. So continue doing that, but with various companies, right? So something that I love is like the different challenges that different companies pose. It could be around like product market fit, or it could be around just the scaling, or you name it. There are different challenges, and that is really invigorating, gives me a lot of energy. So want to continue doing that, providing the expertise that I can to make sure that we serve our customers properly while ensuring that we scale so we can serve many others.
Love it. Well, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for coming on and sharing your stories. It's always lovely to chat. I wish we got to chat more. But for folks who are listening that want more, I know you're taking a break from social, but maybe you'll be coming back. Where can they interact or engage with you?
Yeah, I'm at Samantha Leal at LinkedIn or Twitter, mostly more active in LinkedIn. And yeah, we'd love to connect, answer any questions, and really happy to be here, Andrew. I love what you're doing, sharing these stories. I wish I had them when I was starting out. Normalize this, right? That everyone goes through these challenges and that you're not the only one, because sometimes you feel like you do. Like you're the only one, there's something wrong with you. It's not. We all face them. And it's also interesting to see how the people you've interviewed handled it, right? You can grab some of this advice, try it out, and see how it played out for them, right? So I think this is amazing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the pod. I hope that you enjoyed the episode. If you did, the biggest gift that you could give me as a small business owner and as a content creator would be a review. You know the game. You can go on to Apple Podcasts. You can go on Spotify. Leave a review. That would help me service this content to other folks who are like you. Obviously, you should subscribe to the content if you really dug it. And if there's feedback that you have for me, folks you think I should chat with, stuff that you wish I would gloss over faster, whatever it is, I'm all ears. I work in growth. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I try to collect feedback and iterate quickly. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn at Andrew Kaplan or on Twitter at @akaplan. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you next show.